Hello and welcome to my channel again. How lovely to see you! So in my previous video I shared the process of cutting with the laser cutting machine. In today's video we'll be making lots of wooden jewelry. Also all the products I used in this video will be mentioned below in the description box, as well as the machine that made it all possible, and that is the xTool D1 Pro. Like I said, I was so impressed with the machine and I will be using it forever until it breaks down into pieces, and hopefully that's not gonna be very soon. Buckle up! So before I did anything with these, I wiped all the burnt edges with a dry cloth, some of them with a damp cloth, and brushed them with a dry toothbrush. There were some pieces I decided to scrub under running water, and that removed the charring quite a bit. This piece is how it came out from the machine, and here is the one I washed and scrubbed. And so is this one. And I thought that looked pretty cool too. Alright, let's paint these beauties. First I'm going to use watercolors, and this is quite a good brand I believe, but honestly I will not be creating any masterpieces. I mean, I will in a way, but not like proper paintings. So I guess any watercolors are fine. I'm pretty much going to stain the wood, and that's what I'm doing right now. Staining this cheap wood to look more fancy schmancy. I'm just wiping the excess paint with my finger. Not sure why I didn't use a cloth, but I guess I was feeling very creative and spontaneous. Then I let it dry for a bit and painted the front with a white acrylic paint pen and let that dry too. And this is my very professional looking dryer. Then I went in with more acrylic paint pens in different colors, and I used dry brushes to blend the colors together. Here is another piece which I stained with watercolor. Shake it, baby! Oh, shake that pen! Yeah, I was having the time of my life. Singing, dancing, painting. What else could a girl want? And yes, I do feel like a girl sometimes, very often actually. And I don't care how old I am on paper. Again, painting with white, letting it dry, and then adding more colors. But this looks rubbish. I had to fix the blending later on. This is an earring that I have already painted, but then I decided to stain it too. So I carefully painted the unfinished wood with a brown watercolor paint and a tiny brush. This is the piece I showed you earlier, the one I washed. I'm painting it this gorgeous light blue acrylic paint. I ended up pumping and squirting some paint on paper and then dipping the tip into it, so it was a lot easier and faster to apply. And look how happy this color makes me. Aww. Then I wiped the edges a bit with a damp cloth and added little white dots with a dotting tool. This turned out to be one of my favorites, and I am about to present you with a lot of jewelry in this video. Like this one, for example. Guess what it's gonna be? As you can see, I'm really just experimenting here. I'm not trying to impress anyone, profit from these, although I am thinking of putting some of these out for sale. Or make them perfect. I am just having fun and trying what works and what doesn't. Pushing my own boundaries. I think that's why I enjoyed myself so much. By the way, a little shout out to Bella Design from Etsy. They have so many gorgeous jewelry designs ready for cutting. And I ended up purchasing another 6 designs because I'm obsessed at the moment and they were on sale, so... Birds! Yay! I can finally show you my little birdies of paradise. All painted with acrylic paint pens and some blended with brushes. Oh, I had so many plans for this red one, but it ended up having a tragic life, I'm sorry to say. Right now I am painting the front with bright red watercolor and then mix of red and brown for the back. Here I painted the engraving going into the ridges, and here I just lightly brushed over it to keep the sharp contrast. Wow, here it is. Poor thing. I added some UV resin and glitter into the bird cutout, but overfilled it and it looked horrendous. So I snapped it in half, got the resin bird out and added it into another piece, which was initially a test piece. I pushed the bird into the cutout and then filled it from the other side with more resin. Ta-da! Silver linings! We have something new! And we learned a lesson. And with this one, I shall now use watercolor pencils to add some color. So I colored it with pink, added a bit of blue, and then used a slightly damp brush and blended the two colors together. I used them on this stained piece too, but it was too dark for the colors to stand out, so it didn't look that great. And then this piece, which was just a test piece, and it looked more like a Christmas ornament. I'll start with my least favorite and finish with my most favorite varnish. Minwax gloss varnish. I didn't like the finish and it says that it's pretty dangerous when you breathe it in, so I shall not use it again, which makes it my least favorite varnish. Liquitex gloss. I will use this varnish again, but I just didn't like the gloss finish on my wooden jewelry. I'm pretty sure it made the watercolor paint bleed too, but it was fine on the acrylic paint. Here is one piece half varnished and half just bare. My second favorite, I actually had two, was this oil-based varnish I bought from an Etsy seller. It's easy to apply with a brush or cloth, but cloth is better in my opinion. I love the fact it's natural, food and toy safe. The finish is quite nice too, but it does make the jewelry look a bit greasy. I think that's normal, and I'm sure on toys or cutting boards it would look just fine, but I'm not sure about my jewelry, especially when it's painted with acrylic paints. But overall it seemed to do the job, doesn't smell and is non-toxic. My second favorite is this Winsor & Newton matte varnish, and although it's more like a satin finish than matte, it looked great and felt great to touch. Again, here is one earring varnished and one not varnished. But one thing to keep in mind when it comes to varnishes is whether it's water-based, solvent-based or oil-based, or I don't know if there are any other bases. The Liquitex, Winsor & Newton and Minwax are all water-based. And what happens when you apply them to watercolors or watercolor pencils? It makes them bleed, unfortunately, just as I've noticed here. This is the matte varnish and it was taking my color away. So I tested the oil-based varnish and it worked just fine. No bleeding. I also tried my favorite varnish just to test it, which is also oil-based, and that was fine too. And this leads me to the one I was happy with the most, and I also varnished most of my jewelry with it. Again, this one is from an Etsy seller, a very helpful one I have to say, and it's supposed to be non-toxic, toy safe, food safe, but don't eat it. It's so easy to apply, cloth or brush. I preferred a brush. Once it's dry, it still looks so natural, not greasy at all, and yet it seems to be a strong varnish. It does have a bit of a smell, not much, just a tiny bit. I think it's the linseed oil. It kind of reminded me of the times when I painted with oils, but that goes away maybe in a week. It's solvent-free and this massive can will last me forever, I guess. And I used it over watercolor paints, the watercolor pens, over acrylics, and none of the paints bled. This is my second dryer, a handy little thing. Here are the dry pieces after one coat of the Gilboy's varnish and they look amazing. More crafting! I have decided to try resin again, this time a UV resin I found on Amazon, and to cure it I have this massive UV light torch and also some dried flowers which I've had for a while now and was so excited to try. Oh, and this is a backing tape, very useful for working with resin, especially UV resin. So I basically stuck the tape to the bottom of the piece, added a bit of resin into the cutout and I moved it all around with a toothpick. Then I added my dried flowers and cured the resin with the torch. I would always recommend to ventilate the room well and wear safety glasses and a mask, since there is a vapor coming out of the resin, especially when you are curing it, and it's always a good idea to keep safe. After it dried, I added another layer of resin. It had lots of bubbles, so I removed most of them with a heat gun, but the heat created a film on the top, so I couldn't get the rest of the bubbles out. Then I cured the top, flipped the piece and cured the bottom. By the way, this piece was the one with the dark stain and white flowers, but then I wanted to try silver mica powder on them and I kind of ruined it. So I decided to wash it off and then repainted it in these colors. And here is another resin project. This time I'm adding flatback crystals. I was planning on doing vertical line with 3 crystals, blue one on the top. But I didn't think it through. After all, I am just testing the waters at the moment, and so it ended up not happening. Happy little accidents. That's all I'm going to say. And the green one was decorated with a massive flatback crystal. It's a Preziosa domed crystal, but I just can't remember the exact name of it. And I'm gonna show you a few tricks here. So I found one of the cutout birds that fitted perfectly into the oval cutout, pushed it in and then added some resin into the places where the wings and tail were touching the oval. I really didn't want to fill the oval with resin completely, so I cured it, then added a bit more resin from the back and cured it again. And then I stuck some tape to cover the little hole and added a little bit of resin, followed by a pointed back crystal. Cured it from the top just a bit to keep the crystal in place. Then I lifted the piece carefully and cured the bottom for a few seconds. Then I put my torch on the table and the piece on the top for about a minute or so. Lastly, I removed the tape and cured the resin properly. And then I got my E6000 glue and added a teeny tiny bit into the dimple in the bird, which I will tell you about in a second. Then put another pointed back crystal into it and let it dry. And the resin still stuck to it, but I much prefer the Gilboy's varnish, as the grip of the resin to the wood was a lot stronger. So this is the tool I used. I got it years ago for marking metal. You basically hammer it and it makes a mark, and then it's easier to drill a hole as the drill stays in place. But in this case I simply pushed it into the wood and it made a perfect little setting. The harder you push it into the wood, the bigger the hole gets. I did the same with this earring too and added a small crystal as well. And now this earring was a bit of a mess. I really didn't like it at all. It looked like a Christmas decoration. I also painted this birdie with a permanent golden pen, but the layer was too thick and it just wouldn't dry fast enough, so I wiped the excess off. I made this stud fitting out of brass wire and stuck it onto the back of the bird. Then I attached both pieces with a jump ring. And like I said, the idea was good, the colors were terrible, of course, and just too much of everything. So I decided to scrub both pieces with wet sandpaper, water and a brush, and once they were dry, I repainted them. What a relief. This was now my cup of tea. I had to add about 2 layers of white acrylic paint because the base was still a bit dark, and you can still see it through a bit, but it looks kind of rustic and I like it. And then I added the beautiful blue paint over it as well. Are you ready for all the finished jewelry I made so far? There is loads, so let's start. This pair of earrings is so nice too. Love the color combination, and it's been finished with these stainless steel earring hooks just to keep it simple. Here is the spontaneous one again with stainless steel fish hooks. There is a line across the resin bird, and that's because the tape I used had a crease on. So if you are planning on doing that, then make sure your tape is nice and flat. This is one of the rings I made. I just used the oval cutout from one of the earrings and stuck this stainless steel charm on. I have them in my shop as well as other findings you will see in this video. And then stuck a little pointed back crystal into the hole. Then I attached the whole thing to a ring blank, which was a bit too large, but never mind. And voila, ring finished. Oh, now this pair is just stunning. I added flat back crystals to them and again finished with fish hooks, this time handmade with sterling silver bead and a pearl. A simple stud earring here, very cute indeed. And here is the one with resin and flowers, as well as a little rhinestone again stuck with resin, and brass fish hook with red pecan bead. Let's see the birds again. I think they are adorable. So this ended up as a necklace. I wanted to attach it onto a faux leather cord initially, but I just couldn't be asked looking for it, so slightly robust gold-plated chain it was. And I am so glad I went this route. The gold with the dark brown just looks really cool. Because it had a pointy top, I attached the chain onto the piece with 2 jump rings. I really love this necklace. It feels so natural and simple, yet the chain gives it a bit more shine and I feel it makes it more interesting. And it's been varnished with a Gilt Boys varnish. You can't even tell there is a coat of varnish on it, can you? Oh my goodness. And this is another one of my favorites. I'm sure you can tell I have many. I decided to paint the bird white and added fish hook with a pearl. I wonder if you have any favorites yet? Let me know in the comments, please. I just left this one unvarnished, just wanted to see what it would look like as a stud. And this is the other piece with the matte satin varnish, and I attached this little brass pile as a bail and gold-plated huggy hoops. I really like this earring, and I've also used so many of the oval cutouts from the earrings to make other jewelry, you know, recycling. Like this other earring, I just added this little leaf charm, just pressed it with my flat nose pliers because it was slightly domed and I needed it flat. And then applied E6000 on the back of it with a toothpick. This is just a piece of wire for demonstration, and stuck it on. It created a nice veil. And look at this sparkly ring. I basically made loads of little settings with my marking tool and added pointed back crystals into them with some glue. Ooh, look at this big earring here. I'm still not quite sure about it, but I don't know, maybe I'll repaint it or something. These earrings are again my favorites. I have finished each of them in a slightly different way just to see the difference. This one is finished with silver wire and I stuck a little flat back crystal onto the spiral. The second one is made in gold and I just used a ball pin to add the bead on. I really want to make them the same, but I don't know which one to choose. What do you think? Here is the original earring. It was the first cut I have ever made on my new laser machine. It's been cut from different type of wood, so it kind of looks a little bit different and it looks very pretty indeed. Just a bit too large for me, I think. This is a very simple earring. I added a standard fish hook, but then I decided to bend it with my chain nose pliers to make it more interesting. And I think it worked. And now let me show you another favorite of mine, the green necklace. Yes, it's a necklace! Again with gold-plated chain, and this time I added different beads on ball pins to make it extra interesting. So I kind of forgot to attach the last bead, so let's do it now together! And again, here it is. This time the necklace is really finished. I really hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. It was really fun to make all these earrings and rings and all sorts. I felt so creative, honestly, you know, painting and gluing and working with the resin and then the wire, and oh, it was just beautiful. So yes, I hope you had fun watching it as well. If you did enjoy it, then give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. It's obviously going through some changes, but they will be good changes, I promise. That's it for this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! Love ya!